Alright. Where's my... Okay, so do I just tell you the countdown, or... I thought someone actually had to join the Discord, but if you don't need to, then that's fine. Count it off? Okay. Well, let me go ahead and make a new file, and then get to the selection screen. Okay. So I guess I'll do a countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Alright, so I'm Ford373, and this is Sonic Hero Team Rose. So we're gonna start off by not going to the first stage that everyone else goes to. We're actually gonna go to the tutorial stage, because Sonic Heroes is split into 4 different teams, with each team kind of representing like a different difficulty. And Team Rose is supposed to be considered the easiest one, so I guess the devs decided, let's send them to the tutorial stage every single time that they start playing with Team Rose. So yeah, we gotta just kind of mash through every single part of this. Michelle is basically telling you all the different mechanics of the game and stuff, and don't really want to hear that because that's slow. Alright, and you also don't want to fight these enemies because it takes up too much time, so what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to switch to big and then do a belly flop into flight formation in order to gain more height than the game normally intends you to have. There I performed a double rocket excel. Basically how rocket excelling works in this game is if you charge up your characters by holding down the B button and then you release it, you will be able to have your teammates send you flying off in whatever direction your speed character is facing. Rocket Excel has different animations for each team, depending on the characters. And unfortunately, Team Rose's Rocket Excel is the absolute worst, because if you mess up the Rocket Excel and both your teammates are not behind you whenever you let go of the B button, aiming comes to a complete and utter dead stop. So you always want to make sure that you don't run into boxes and that both of your teammates are standing behind you whenever you go to perform a Rocket Excel. It's gonna destroy these boxes. There we go. And then again, just kind of avoiding enemies is like the main goal of this. Some of them you can't really advance without destroying enemies, and some of them it's just faster too. And oh, okay. Well, now I have to wait for my teammates to catch up. Your teammates can take damage even if they're not the one leading the group. And if that happens, then they'll go into a vulnerability state like that. Except if both of your teammates get put into a vulnerability state, you cannot actually have them come to your side for like 4 seconds. So you don't want that to happen. If only one of them gets knocked out, then it's fine. But if both of them get knocked out, well, then you're having a bad time. Alright, so that was pretty awful. But we made it through the first stage alive. So I'll take that. Alright, now the real first stage, Seaside Hill. This is honestly one of the easier stages, but still has a bit of wonkiness to it. Okay, so you're gonna see me, those gates will appear many times throughout the run. Pretty much what they do is they force you to change characters to whatever formation that you see. Like the yellow gate will have you change to Cream, the blue gate will have you change to Amy, and the red gate will have you change to Big. If you're already as that character, then nothing happens whenever you go through that gate. Sometimes it can be a nuisance, sometimes it can actually be helpful because it prevents you from having to do an additional input. But most of the time I'll generally be avoiding them. Like there's a flight gate up here that I don't really need, so I will just avoid it. Also, you'll notice many times that I will, when I switch to flight formation, I will switch to the power formation first. The reason for that being is that whenever you switch from one formation to the other, there's an animation that goes through each time. Switching from power to flight is much better because both of your teammates are already by your side whenever power formation is first. But if flight formation comes after speed formation, then you're going to have a possibility of the power formation and flight formation character, I'm sorry, power formation and speed formation character coming in at like a very fast pace and then bringing you to a dead stop. So pretty much anytime I can, I'm going to try and just uh, have to switch to power formation and then switch back to speed formation. Ah, and that's one of those missed rocket excels I was talking about, which I'll generally want to try and avoid. Alright, so that was 139. That's not great, but it generally between 130 and 140 is what I aim for this stage. It's not my best one. It's also one of my least favorites, so I take what I can get. Alright, so the next stage, Seaside Hill, it's a bit more, I'd say it's a bit more lenient. There's not really any places where you can fall off and just jump in the water usually, unless I just do something completely wrong. Alright, so I'm actually going to switch to big beforehand so that I can do a belly flop into speed formation, as well as die, because that enemy sometimes will stand in the middle and sometimes stand on the side, and unfortunately, he was standing right there. There we go. That doesn't waste too much time, especially because the door stays open whenever you die at the start there, so it actually doesn't mean too much. It's just annoying to have that enemy just kind of sit there in the middle of the way. Also, you notice many times that I will either cancel my umbrella animation or switch to speed formation after a belly flop. The reason why I do that is it allows you to gain a large amount of speed while also negating the risk of possibly missing a Rocket Excel. So you'll often see me do that in place of Rocket Excelling because it's generally safer, but it's slightly slower to set up in some cases. This is one of those places where you can just kind of die if you're not careful. So that's why I always switch to power formation before going to flight. Alright. And generally doing the belly flop cancels is one of the fastest ways in order to either open doors like these, where you can attack them, or do as I do, as well as destroying certain objects that only the power character can destroy. Alright, gonna switch to flight formation here because it leads to the fastest path. There's several paths that you can take in order to get through here, but switching to flight formation here and then flying off over to the side over here is generally the fastest. Alright, and both my teammates got bot there. It doesn't really matter at that point because I don't actually need them for the rest of the stage, except for using cream here to get on top of the pillars. Oh, sub to not Seaside Hill, Ocean Palace is actually pretty okay, but unfortunately it doesn't mean much because I died at the start, so it was more like I'd say a 205, something like that. Alright, so here we have the first boss in the run, Egghawk. Egghawk is kind of easy. Like, pretty much the strat for this boss is there is a crate to your back right that has an invincibility in it. What you're going to want to do is you want to grab that, then head to a certain spot on a tile behind you to manipulate Egghawk into respawning, or not respawning, but repositioning himself right at the center platform. Even though what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to chase after Egghawk so that he will go to the next platform and then you attack him. But that's slow. So instead we're just going to fight him here. Yeah, pretty much you get the invulnerability so that way Eggman can't really damage you when you're doing this. Unfortunately, because Egghawk took so long in order to reposition himself, my invulnerability wore out. But it's not that important because I grabbed the ring beforehand. Otherwise, that probably would have resulted in a death, which would have been bad. Yeah, pretty much most of the bosses against Eggman's giant flying robots will entail me manipulating him to come back to where I am as opposed to chasing after him like the game actually wants you to do. This is kind of a good opportunity to kind of explain what the heck is going on in this game. Uh, Pretty much each character, or should I say team, has their own sort of story going on where they face off against Eggman. It's always the same boss for the Eggman fights, but the only bosses that change are the wave-based fights, which are Robot Carnival and Robot Storm, and the team battles. Team Rose faces off against Team Sonic and Team Chaotix. Team Dark faces off against Team Chaotix and Team Sonic, and so on and so forth. Pretty much you can equate to whichever character team faces off against one in one story, they face off against the same one in the other one. And they're generally the same fight, although they're done slightly differently as far as strats are concerned for some fights. Alright, so I'm going to grab the power up here. Guess I can explain how the power up system works. Pretty much, if you destroy 5 enemies, hit certain capsules, oh wow, that didn't work, or hit a checkpoint, you will gain a power up. And that what power up you get is determined by with checkpoints, which character you pass the checkpoint with. With the enemies destroyed, it depends on which character you destroy the enemy with. You will get the power up for whatever character you weren't playing as, or one of the two ones I should say. So say if I were to destroy 5 enemies and the 5th enemy were destroyed with Cream, it would either be a power up for Amy or a power up for Big. And so on and so forth. And pretty much what the power-ups do is they allow you to do more damage with your attacks, as well as add different properties to your other abilities. For example, Amy gains the ability to create like a windstorm whenever she does a homing attack. And that's useful for any section where you need to have like a wind element applied to your attack. For example, on poles where you would normally have to jump and then perform a tornado hammer. Instead of doing that, you can simply just homing attack into the railing and then it will attach you to the rail. Like this one coming up. You can also do a Rocket XL into the railing in order to avoid doing a jump into a tornado hammer. On these moving floors, it's very difficult in order to get a Rocket XL going because your character is always moving, so it's hard to position them. Alright. And this last section of railing can be kind of dangerous because rails in this game are notoriously bad. If you accidentally hold left and then jump off of the rail, you're highly likely in order to just flat out kill yourself because the game will send you flying off into whatever direction it feels like. I would argue that the rail detection, as far as like you actually hitting the rail, is very lenient in this game as opposed to games like Sonic Adventure 2, where it's really difficult to land on the railing, but as far as switching to a different rail, the game is absolutely horrid at that. Alright, so Power Plant starts off with you riding on an escalator, so pretty much you're just going to be sitting here and waiting for the top to be reached. What I'm going to want to do is actually I'm going to want to grab some of these upgrades for Cream, because level 2 Cream is probably one of the best enemy killing things in the game. Like, she can home in on enemies from afar and just do a lot of damage. And just basically one-shot most normal enemies except for enemies that have shields. There we go. It's exceedingly helpful for clearing out waves, and once I get to Robot Storm and Robot Carnival, I will be making great use of that. RNG forgiven. But yeah, for the most part, there isn't really that much RNG to this run, except for the few times where I need certain power-ups from killing enemies. That's the biggest place where RNG plays a key factor. Yeah, couldn't get the jump off. Alright, gonna see if I can... Ah, didn't get it. If you time your jump properly, you can actually get a slope jump off of that ramp there and avoid having to kill that enemy. I'm gonna sort of fly here. If you simply just fly and let Cream glide down, you don't actually get enough height in order to make it over to that platform, but if you hold the A button, you'll be able to maintain enough height in order to make it there. Alright, so coming up we have the first team battle against one of the opposing teams in the game. The Team Sonic fight is kind of a pain depending on whether or not they actually want to get knocked off the side or not. But if I perform this strat just right, it should, keyword should, work out just fine. Alright, so I switch to flight formation and then knock them onto the ground. And then hopefully they'll be knocked off with the tornado hammer. Who got left out? Nah. There we go. This is what you don't want. Is stragglers being left over. There we go. Okay. And occasionally if you just knock off one of them, the rest of the team will follow suit. So because I knocked off Sonic, Knuckles decided he wanted to follow him. And I'm completely okay with this.
We're sorry, Team Sonic.
Alright, so, coming up is going to be one of my least favorite stages, or a couple of stages in the run, Casino Park and Bingo Highway. These stages are kind of terrible purely due to one mechanic, the pinball physics. Pretty much, they decided it would be a good idea to kind of take away control from the player, and just basically turn it into Sonic Spinball. Thankfully it controls a bit better and it's a lot shorter, but nonetheless it can waste time should the game just not want to launch me in the right direction. Okay. So the game kind of screwed me over there. Pretty much what happened there is if you initiate a flight, you have a certain amount of distance you can go before Cream is no longer able to keep your team flying. And because I did not jump before I left that platform, the game thought that I had initiated a flight basically in midair, and because I was going so fast, it just sent me flying straight down. Because I ran out of flight juice, pretty much. There we go. And I always try and land on that center pipe there because it's much faster than going down either the right or left ones, because it basically sends you straight up to where you need to go. I'm going to launch Amy and Cream off the side here, so that way when I land on the end of this section, they'll respawn immediately, because the game thinks they pretty much fell off the side and are unusable. Up. There we go. Except Cream somehow landed back on the stage. Alright, that's fine. Alright, and now I'm going to be abusing the game's pinball physics here. Oh, is that gonna make it? Yeah, it is. Whenever you land on the pinball table, it initiates a state where the game pretty much will always teleport you directly to whatever character you press at the time, as long as they're not dead. And by landing on the table after launching Amy off to the other side of the stage, I was able to teleport immediately to where Amy's location was because I touched the pinball table and entered the, I guess you can call it a pinball state. That gets far more use in Team Sonic and Team Dark, and also a little bit, actually quite a bit in Team Chaotix's run, but here it's mostly used to get that last bit of a pinball section. Alright, Bingo Highway is arguably a worse stage just because there's a lot more sections where you're forced to ride the pinball table. And there's also a lot of doors that you normally can't pass without destroying enemies. This first one you can actually pass without destroying enemies, but it's generally more consistent to just kill the flying enemy here. You also want to kill him before he spots you, because if he spots you with a spotlight, he'll spawn more enemies that you in turn have to kill in order to advance the stage. Alright. And I'm gonna want to grab a level up for Cream here, because there will be a door later on that I'll need to open up as quickly as possible, and level 2 Cream is the most useful thing for that. Let's see if I can get the bingo. Ah, there we go. The run has been blessed. Alright. This is one of the worst sections. Oh, looks like Amy picked up some rings. That won't be very useful, but, you know, whatever. Come on. Also didn't want to do that. Yeah, this section is a bit of a pain. You can get it to go up here. There we go. And you want to avoid those, robots that look like giant alien spaceships, because what they do is they will capture one of your teammates, and you either have to destroy them or enter a checkpoint in order to get them back, which is very, very annoying. Alright, and this is the part where level 2 Cream comes in handy. You can destroy these enemies really fast. And coming up we have a door clip, which will hopefully save me having to use Team Blast to destroy these enemies. Enemy placement's not great, but thankfully I got the door clip first try. So yeah, if you roll and then unroll into certain sections of the door, you can pretty much just clip through certain doors in Bingo Highway. It works kind of in Hang Castle as well, but it's a bit more finicky, and you're better off using an alternative door skip method, which involves you switching to flight formation as you were about to hit the door. Alright, gonna try and avoid, there we go. Avoiding that pipeline makes it so that you can skip the last little bingo section there. Yeah, missed that. Alright, so that's probably one of my worst stages in the entire run, so I'm glad I made it through that relatively unscathed. And next up we have the first of the 2 RNG boss fights, where you have to fight off Eggman's waves of robots as they are spawned in. The same robots are always spawned in with each wave, no matter what you do, but what upgrades you get to fight the robots with is completely random. So hopefully I will get level 2 Cream first and then level 2 Big. Alright. Okay, that's not good at all. That's also not good. Let's see. And level 2 Big. This is the opposite order of what I need. Okay, now I get 1 level for Cream. If I get another level for Cream at the start here, then this still wouldn't be that bad. Oh. Ah. I'll just use Cream to knock them down. When you use Thundershoot, it knocks enemies onto the ground. And I got level 3 Big, which is completely worthless to me. Ugh. So yeah, I basically just got screwed over by RNG here, so that's pretty great. Oh, I got level 2 Cream now, in the part that it really doesn't matter as much. But, you know, I still have it, so I guess I shouldn't complain. Alright. And, alright. And this is the part where you need level 2 Big, because when you get to level 2, you get this spiky attack, which completely decimates enemies. Except for this guy, because he was standing directly behind me. And apparently there's no hitbox there. So yeah, that was pretty atrocious because of RNG, but I guess it could have been worse. I could have died, which I've definitely had happen before. Or what's also really embarrassing is if you have all of your teammates get captured. If that happens, then you just flat out lose the fight. And you have to start over and lose a life. Alright, so remember how I said before that the rails in this game often don't want to work right? Well, here's an entire level that's centered around those said rails. So yeah, I pretty much just have to hope that I don't get flung off of a rail and then die for no reason. Alright, I'm going to belly flop onto the railing here because when Big enters the belly flop formation, then he actually has a larger hitbox, which makes it easier to land on the rails. Alright, this is one of those sections where one of those gates that change your formation can screw you over. But if you jump off early, then it's not really an issue. Oh yeah, I should probably mention why I'm repeatedly switching back and forth between Big and Amy. Pretty much, normally how you're supposed to accelerate with your characters is you... Oh, don't do that. Is you're supposed to repeatedly press the B button. I'm glad that didn't kill me. And then, as they spin around, you'll gain more speed and momentum. But what you can do instead is you can switch between the power character and the speed character, this case being Big and Amy, and then it accelerates you to your max speed a lot faster. Alright. Probably should have taken that checkpoint, but it should be fine. So long as the game just doesn't fling me off. Alright, so pretty much I just want to accelerate along these rails as much as possible. Okay, cool. That's one of those railings that can just kind of fly you off and kill you. There's one more part where I need to switch rails, and then after that I should be, for the most part, safe. There we go. I need to get on this railing. The other one is not as fast. I actually don't know where that third railing takes you. It's probably the same location, but I'd rather not risk it. Alright, and now I'm going to jump down here to skip the rest of the rail section, because you can just land on here and then go towards the end. Alright, so not a bad rail canyon at all. Alright, so time for Bullet Station. This stage is a bit different from Rail Canyon in that it's not based around rails so much as it is based around these giant cannons that you're going to end up getting shot out of. These cannons fire on a global cycle, so basically they begin firing when you enter the stage and they keep firing so long as you're in the stage. And they fire at certain intervals. I think it's like 4 or 5 seconds, and you want to try and enter the cannon as they're firing, so that way you don't miss a cycle and then have to wait, which I think I might end up missing the cycle because I did that first part really slow. It's usually about 35 seconds. It also depends on how quickly your teammates get into the cannon, and they were really slow. Yep, I missed the cycle. Oh well. There are certain times where the game can just kind of screw you out of a cycle, because what it'll do is it will look like you made it in time to make the cycle, and it fires, but your characters don't get shot out, which is pretty great. Eh. Ah, I did not mean to switch to Amy there. Alright. Then you have to switch to the power character to destroy this. I think it's a turbine for the train. And then instead of riding down to the bottom there, you can just kind of fly off here and then hit the goal ring. A bit of a developer oversight there. And now we have what is one of my least favorite bosses in the entire game. Because pretty much how this boss fight works is that it is a fight against a giant flying mech, which nothing new for Eggman here. But this mech has 3 different phases that you have to go through. And the entire fight takes place on a giant floating platform where if the boss knocks you off the side, then you die. So yeah, it's a pretty terrible boss.
Let's get him before Sonic does. Then he'll be head over heels for me.
Ready all cannons! Open fire!
Alright, so instead of chasing after the boss, I'm just gonna stand here and wait for him to come to me, because it's just much easier that way. It negates some of the risk of accidentally falling off the side of the stage, so it's overall safer. This phase is easily one of the most dangerous because it actually knocks you up into the air and can possibly push you off the side. So, like that. That's exactly what you don't want to happen, and that's why that boss is literally the worst in the entire game. Because you can just get knocked off the side and there's nothing you can do to save yourself. Alright, so I will try and take this boss a lot more safely this time by heading up further on his hitbox so that I don't take damage on his propeller. Alright, and... oh jeez, he has 9 health. Yeah, this boss is easily one of the worst in the entire game, and I absolutely dread getting to this boss and then end up dying to him and losing more than 30 seconds. The last phase is kind of a piece of cake because what you can do is you can have Amy and Cream get on your shoulders and then fire into him, but unfortunately they didn't want to cooperate, so now I have to wait for him to cycle back a 3rd time. There we go. Yeah, Egg Albatross is easily the worst boss in the game. It's not even due to RNG, it's pretty much entirely due to it being poorly designed, but that's kind of just what you have to deal with. Alright, so next up we have one of my favorite stages in the run, and just one of my favorite stages in this game in its entirety, Frog Forest. It's pretty straightforward as far as level design goes, and it does have a lot of ways where you can just die by falling off the side. But the way that the level just kind of flows, it just lends itself to be a pretty fun level to play through. Up. And sometimes Amy will just run into that enemy instead of going to the side of him. I love when that happens. Alright, so you can jump off here in order to avoid hitting the frog. One of the main gimmicks of this level is that there are these frogs which, whenever you run into them, they'll basically create platforms which can help you traverse the level. Oh, that was a thing that happened. In Lost Jungle, there are frogs that do the complete opposite of it, that are black frogs, where pretty much what they do is they delete terrain that you would normally be able to stand on and make the level more difficult for you. Ah, Mr. Rocket XL. Take this checkpoint for safety. You can avoid hitting that trigger right there, or that I guess it's a flipper. I don't know exactly what you would call it. And then it allows you to just kind of fly over here. Yeah, one of the big things about this level in the speedrun is that it's such an open level that pretty much you can make it through most of the stage without actually playing through it just by flying off of it in flight formation.
Here we go! Alright!
Still easily one of my favorite stages in the game though.
We're like awesome!
Alright, next up we have Lost Jungle, which is, in my opinion, slightly more difficult but also very rewarding to play through in the speedrun. My biggest problem with this stage is that it's incredibly short for Team Rose. Well, it's very short. All of Team Rose's levels are actually quite short, and the reason for that being is that to make the Team Rose the easiest team to play as, they shorten the level design and reduce the amount of enemies that you have in comparison to, say, Team Sonic or Team Dark. I messed up. You're supposed to get a level up for Big there. It's fine though. Can skip this loop here by just jumping out the side, but unfortunately the camera doesn't always want to cooperate. Oh, there we go. Actually got kind of lucky there where I landed. Yeah, and basically this is how the Black Frogs like to try and mess you up by having these fruits and other things get in your way. Luckily they're not too much of a nuisance. I want to try and avoid that guy because if Big gets captured here, then I'm in for a bad time. Okay, I should still be able to kill this robot relatively quickly. There we go. Alright, and yeah, this is actually where the level ends. It's actually kind of jarring how quickly it just comes to an abrupt stop. That's pretty much how a lot of Team Rose's levels are. If you look at the Team Sonic version of this stage, it goes on for quite a bit longer, and it involves sort of an auto-scroller and a couple more sections where you have to platform past some large robots. But Team Rose doesn't really get to see any of that because they made it easier by removing parts of the stage. Alright, so here we have the hardest boss as far as team battles are concerned. I hope I can get this strat first try. Oh man, that was really difficult. In case you didn't understand the innate sarcasm, this is actually one of the easiest bosses just because you can jump tornado and then they just kind of fall off the side. There's also an IL strat that you can do where if you do a belly flop and then as you're about to hit the ground you restart the fight, the enemy team just kind of falls off the side of the stage and you can beat the level in under a second. I like to do that strat more, but it's far less consistent. But yeah, Team Chaotix is a joke. I wish that it were that easy with Team Dark when you're playing as Team Sonic.
Come on, you guys! Don't you want to find Takola and Froggy? We can do this!
Alright, this is probably my second favorite stage in the run, just because I really like the music for this stage. But I don't really like the stage as much for the run just because of a stupid door clip that you have to do at the start. Hopefully I can get it first-ish try. Yeah, I didn't even set that up properly. There we go. Yeah, doors don't always work properly, so you can just kind of clip through them if you want. Normally what you're supposed to do is hit a switch that takes you to the inverted area. Fun fact for this stage, the gimmick for it is that you are supposed to hit these switches that quote-unquote invert the stage and have the music sort of like reverse and play in a different fashion. But in actuality, what's happening is that you're just being teleported to a different part of the stage. They didn't actually invert your character or anything like that. They just moved you to a different area where it looks like it's inverted. Oh yeah, and then you can just kind of fly off to the goal ring there, making this stage pretty easy. The only hard part is the door skip at the start, because it can be kind of inconsistent whether or not Cream wants to go through or not. Alright, and here's the next stage, which has my, I'd say, second favorite music. It works off of a similar style of using two different themes that run off of the same motif. Depending on which area you're in and what you're doing, the music changes, which I find to be quite an interesting touch.
Everybody look out!
Alright, cool. Whenever you do a Rocket XL, your hitbox actually kind of extends, so it makes it a bit easier in order to do things like that. Also, water walls. Ah! Okay. That wizard can sometimes get in the way. Yeah, this railing section is actually pretty easy because so long as you hold forward and you jump at the right time, you can't die. And actually you can't die on this railing section like at all because there's only one laser that can hit you. And you need at least 3 lasers in order to actually die. Yeah, hit the switch. Normally what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to hit the switch in order to change the area, but instead you can just kind of fly up to those platforms without much trouble. All you have to do is just hold your jump for a little bit and then fly. Most of Team Rose's stages are pretty much just optimization because of how short they are, but tiny mistakes can lose a lot of time if you mess up, especially missing a Rocket XL or dying. Oh, let me see if I can hit this. Ah, I got it.
You tipped Chocola and Froggy, didn't you?
What if I did, then?
Alright, so even if this run doesn't PB, it was still a success.
Get them.
That there was the cutscene glitch where if you press, I think it's A on the right frame as the cutscene loads, then it causes that to happen. It doesn't actually do anything, it just looks really funny. And I got an upgrade for Big, which is not what I wanted again. I got 2 upgrades for Big. Epic. Okay, got 2 upgrades for Cream now. I'm good as far as upgrades are concerned. Die. There we go.
How many of them are there? There's no end to these robots!
Alright. So this is actually the first time I've used Team Blast in the entirety of this run. Pretty much what happens is if you attack, collect rings, or just build points in general, you build up what is known as the Team Blast gauge. And when you press Z, it activates it, and all the enemies in an area are destroyed. And each team gets their own little special upgrade on top of the enemy destruction that normally happens. Team Sonic gains what is known as the Lightspeed attack. Team Rose gets a level up for each character, a shield, and a invincibility. And Team Chaotix gets increased. They get rings from killing enemies whenever they use theirs, so they can basically get a Team Blast, kill everything, and then get another Team Blast immediately afterwards. And Team Dark freezes time, which can be both a blessing and a curse. It freezes the in-game timer as well, so it's heavily abused in ILs. but it also freezes progression of the stage for certain areas, so you don't want to spam it everywhere in order to get like the lowest time, because you literally cannot progress. Alright, so here we have the last little area of the run, which are Egg Fleet and Final Fortress. Egg Fleet's a bit of a tough stage, Final Fortress not so much, but hopefully both of them will go relatively well. I guess I've been a very bad runner, to not even mention one of the or two of the biggest tricks that I don't really do just because I'm not good at it, but I are very relevant to this run if you're going for like really good times. The two of the tricks that I should probably mention are bot boosting and power formation flight. Bot boosting is pretty much where if you enter the if you're able to enter your flight formation and then you are able to knock off your speed character. As you can see, I have not Tails, I am bad. I have Cream, Amy, and then Big. If I can knock off Amy while keeping Big in the formation, and I am able to start a flight excel, where I do the little gliding thing and only have a limited amount of time to move, basically you'll enter this state where if you do another flight excel, the game will think that your speed character is still in the formation and will pull you rapidly towards your speed character. If you do that while there is a wall in between you and the speed character, then you will basically rocket yourself in whatever direction the wall is facing at an incredibly fast rate. That's how this stage can be done in like normally half the time because of how broken the bot boost is. And power formation flight is a bit different, where if you are able to get an angle from a loop or a surface there, you can set it up. You can basically have Big fly through the level by canceling your belly flop animation repeatedly while in the midair. Both of these save huge amounts of time, and the bot boost actually saves about, I'd say, over a minute on this stage alone, because it skips half of this auto scroller. But it's also incredibly difficult to set up, so if you mess it up, then you're going to be losing quite a bit of time.
Why would he need so many ships? Maybe he just had a lot of time on his hands.
But yeah, if you do the bot boost, then you end up on that battleship that we just passed to the right, so it's very useful. So yeah, pretty much I don't really have to do much of anything in this auto scroller. I think I just have to hold down at a certain point, and then I can just kind of let it go through the rest of the time.
We can transfer him to Thunder too.
Oh, that's not what I wanted. Alright, gonna want to try and avoid the cannon fire here because taking damage is really punishing. Alright. Yeah, that's not gonna be enough height now because I got hit. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Generally, you want to try and avoid getting hit there, but sometimes it's literally unavoidable. Oh well. This was a decent egg fleet until that happened. It's fine though. Intended strat, sir. Still viable. And normally you're supposed to destroy an enemy, but if you just kind of bounce yourself off of that, you can just ignore that.
Alright.
I ended up losing about 30 seconds at the end there, but sometimes that stuff just kind of happens.
I just knew we could do it.
Alright, so now we're going into the final level and then the final boss of the run. Final Fortress is actually an easier stage than Egg Fleet, believe it or not, purely because there's just less stuff going on and less ways for you to die.
Here we are. It's quite overwhelming. I've got to pull myself together.
form a double rocket XL off of here, and then switch to flight formation to land on this upper railing. It's not gonna make it. Oh, that's not good. Okay, that's fine. Can I make it? Yes! Just barely, but still, it worked. Up, there we go. Alright, so yeah, pretty much this entire stage is just making it through without falling off. And for the most part, it's pretty lenient because there's not really too much to get in your way if you know the route and know what you're doing. But it can be pretty difficult on a first casual playthrough, because there's a lot of triggers where you need to normally just destroy things and just not die in order to make it through. But in the speedrun, you just kind of skip most of that. Yeah. Alright, so I kind of wanted to stun this robot here, because if you don't, then he can actually put up his shield and take no damage from you no matter what you do, which is incredibly annoying, and you have to wait for him to lower his guard before you can attack him. And that's pretty much where the stage ends right there. I don't know why they have a checkpoint there. I guess if you fall off on these railings here. But for the most part, there's not really anything else that can kill you. There's some spike balls at the end of the second set of rails here, but even if you get hit by them, which you probably shouldn't, and I say that there's like no way to die as I proceed to die, even if you get hit by them, you'll generally land back onto the railing if you react fast enough. But I proved that there is a way to die, and that's to have your character fly off of a rail. I knew that was going to happen eventually, I just didn't expect it to be in the last level. So yeah, I guess I'm lucky that they did put a checkpoint there. Okay, so game, how about you don't fly me off this time? There we go. Alright, so now after that train wreck of a stage, it's time for what'll probably be a train wreck of a boss fight. There's only two type of Egg Emperor fights. There's the fights that go really, really well, and then there's the ones where you die because Cream doesn't pick up the second upgrade that you need to kill him. So let's find out which one I'm gonna get. Alright, so time for one of the most annoying boss fights if things go wrong. Okay, so far so good. Now I just need for Cream to cooperate and to pick up the second upgrade. She did it! We're in there! Okay, now I just need for him to charge at me. And Big didn't attach. Okay. Well, I guess this isn't as bad as it could be, but it's still not great. There we go. So yeah, because the speed character or the flight character has you. No, are you serious? I knew it. I told you there's only two types of boss fights for Egg Emperor. There's it goes really well, or it goes really poorly. Guess which one I got. Anyway, I guess I get a better chance to explain how this boss fight works. If you enter the speed formation, if you enter the flight formation and then you have them attack, and then you actually get the second upgrade because you need that. Actually, I'll just do this. Wow, thanks, Eggman. That's great. That's great. I absolutely hate this boss. Still not as bad as Egg Albatross, but it's still pretty freaking bad. Alright, anyway, now I get a third chance to explain how this boss fight works. If you have the flight character homing attack onto Egg Emperor, and then he charges you, because he's not supposed to do that if you actually keep up with him, then the homing character will continue to attack. Why is he attacking me? Go away. I'm trying to explain how to kill you. Anyway, if you have him go in, and they homing attack, and then the speed character picks up the second upgrade, then they attach onto him, and they continue attacking him until they come back to you. And then he dies. But I don't get any of that, because he won't give me a chance to talk, because Egg Emperor is a bully. Time is coming up. When I say time, and he gets the last hit.
We'll put an end to this.
Time. Jesus, I hate this fight.
We did it!
Alright. So other than the fact that he just wouldn't let me talk to explain how to kill him, and, well, just the general badness of my bosses in that run, that was not bad, because I only died in 2 stages, both of which were completely ridiculous. One of them, actually both of them were not my fault. So I take it. I guess I should go ahead and display the in-game time, even though I know it won't be a PB, because that was absolutely atrocious. So I should just go ahead and soft reset my game. It's gonna look like a black screen for a bit, but don't worry, I promise you this is intended. There we go. A 55-16? That's not bad. I wanted to get sub 55, but considering how awful that Egg Emperor fight was, I expected nothing better. I believe it was the 10th character profile. It was a sub 50. It was about a minute off of my PV, so that was okay. Actually, no, that's not my PV. Well, yes it is. No, it's not. This is my PV. So yeah, that was several minutes off my PV. I'll take it. Either way, I guess that's pretty much all I have to show. So thank you all for having me, and yeah, catch you people later.
Alright, excellent. So let's go ahead and see if we can swap over to